She collapsed unconscious in the snow, whispered her son's name one last time, and a neighbor found her just in time to call an ambulance. The next thing I remember was light. Not warm light, not comforting light, but a sharp white glow that made my eyes sting when I tried to open them. There was a steady beeping somewhere near my head, slow and patient, like it had all the time in the world. I didn't. My throat felt dry, my limbs heavy, as if they had been borrowed from someone else. "Mrs. Hale? Can you hear me?" A woman's voice floated above me, calm, professional. I turned my head slightly and saw a nurse leaning over the bed, her expression gentle in a way that made my chest ache. She adjusted a blanket around my shoulders, and only then did I realize how cold I still felt, even here. "You're in the hospital," she said softly. "Jacksonville Memorial. You were brought in early this morning." Hospital. The word landed slowly. I tried to speak, but my lips barely moved. My mind searched for the missing pieces, grasping at shadows. Snow, darkness, a door that never opened. "How long?" My voice cracked before the sentence could finish. "You were outside for several hours," she replied. "You had severe hypothermia. Another hour out there, and—" She didn't finish. She didn't need to. I closed my eyes. Outside. The memory hovered just out of reach, like a dream that refuses to come into focus. All I knew was that I hadn't meant to be there. Not like that. When the nurse stepped away, I noticed my phone on the small table beside the bed. It was plugged into a charger, the screen dark. For a moment, I felt a flicker of relief. Maybe there were missed calls. Maybe Evan had panicked when he realized I was gone. I reached for the phone with stiff fingers and pressed the button. Nothing. No missed calls, no messages, no voicemail notifications. Just the time and date staring back at me, cruel in their simplicity. Christmas morning. My chest tightened, not with anger, but with something heavier. Understanding. Maybe. Or the beginning of it. A doctor came in later, a tall man with tired eyes. He explained my condition carefully, clinically, as if speaking to someone else. Hypothermia, dehydration, shock. He told me I was lucky. That a neighbor had noticed me slumped near a porch and called for help before it was too late. "A neighbor?" I whispered. "Yes, you were unresponsive when they found you." I nodded slowly. I wanted to ask more, but the words felt dangerous, fragile, like if I spoke them, something inside me would finally break. After he left, the room grew quiet again. The beeping machine resumed its steady rhythm. I stared at the ceiling, tracing faint cracks in the paint, and tried to understand how I had gone from planning Christmas dinner to lying alone in a hospital bed. I was 72 years old, a widow, a retired school cafeteria manager who had spent her life feeding other people, cleaning up after them, making sure everyone else had what they needed before sitting down herself. I had raised my son alone after his father died, working double shifts, skipping meals, telling myself it was temporary, that it would be worth it. Somewhere along the way, that became my role, the one who waits, the one who gives, the one who understands. As the gray morning light crept in through the window, one thought settled in my chest, quiet but unmovable. Whatever had happened last night was not an accident. And for the first time, instead of fear, I felt something else beginning to surface. Clarity. The memories came back slowly, not in order, but in feelings. Warmth first, then hope, then the quiet fear I refused to name at the time. Christmas Eve had begun early for me. I woke before dawn in my small apartment on the south side of Jacksonville, the air cool enough to make me pull my robe tighter as I shuffled into the kitchen. The place was modest, but it was mine. I put water on for coffee and stood there listening to the familiar hum of the refrigerator, letting myself believe that this day would be different. I had been invited. That alone felt like progress. Evan had called 3 days earlier, his voice distracted but polite. "We're hosting Christmas Eve dinner," he said. "Rachel thinks it would be nice if you came." Rachel thinks, not Evan wants. I noticed it, but I told myself not to read too much into words. I had done that my whole life, translating disappointment into patience, neglect into understanding. I spent the morning preparing food the way I always had. I baked a pecan loaf Evan used to love when he was a boy, the kind with just enough sweetness to feel indulgent. I wrapped it carefully once it cooled, tying the ribbon twice so it wouldn't come loose. I made deviled eggs and a small container of my late husband's cranberry relish, the recipe written in his handwriting on a yellowed index card. While everything baked, I laid the gifts out on my bed. Nothing extravagant. A sweater for Evan I found on sale, a scented candle for Rachel, something neutral that wouldn't offend. For the grandchildren, books instead of toys. I had learned that lesson the hard way. Still, when I added up the receipts, my stomach tightened. Nearly a full month of careful saving gone in one afternoon. "It's worth it," I whispered to myself, smoothing the wrapping paper. "It's Christmas." Before leaving, I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. My hair was thinner than it used to be, my face lined in ways I didn't always recognize. I pinned a small silver brooch to my coat, one Evan's father had given me years ago. It made me feel steady, seen. The drive over felt strangely quiet. I watched houses pass by, each one glowing with lights and movement, families already gathering. I practiced what I would say when I walked in. How proud I was of Evan. How grateful I was to be included. I even imagined Rachel smiling, really smiling. Not the tight, polite version she saved for me. When I pulled up to their house, it looked perfect. Warm light spilled through the windows, cars lined the street. I could hear laughter even before I reached the door. I paused for just a second, my hand hovering over the bell. I told myself not to expect too much, that expectations were dangerous at my age. But hope has a way of sneaking in anyway, quiet and persistent. I rang the bell. The door opened, and Rachel stood there in a red dress, glass of wine in hand. Her smile flickered, brief and practiced. "Oh, hi, Margaret," she said. "You made it." I stepped inside, carrying the food and gifts, letting the warmth wrap around me. For a moment, I truly believed I had arrived somewhere I belonged. I didn't know yet that I was already being measured and found inconvenient. The warmth hit me first, not just from the heater, but from the noise. Voices overlapping, glasses clinking, music playing softly somewhere deeper in the house. It was the kind of sound that says you're late, that something has already begun without you. Rachel stepped aside just enough for me to pass. Not a full welcome, just space. "Everyone's in the dining room," she said, already turning away. "Why don't you set your things down in the kitchen first?" I nodded and followed her, careful not to bump into anyone as I moved through the hallway. Coats were piled on a bench, shoes lined up neatly by the wall, evidence of people who knew exactly where they belonged. The kitchen was bright and spotless, counters cleared except for trays of appetizers that looked untouched. I placed the pecan loaf and the relish beside them, arranging everything as neatly as I could. It felt instinctive, like muscle memory. I had spent decades doing this for other people, making things presentable, making myself small. "Can I help with anything?" I asked, turning toward Rachel. She didn't look up. She was chopping something at the counter, her bracelets clinking softly with each movement. "No," she said. "Just sit for now. We've got it." Sit. The word landed heavier than it should have. I took a seat at the small table by the window. From there, I could hear the dining room clearly. Laughter rose and fell in waves. Someone told a story that ended in applause. Another voice followed, louder, confident. Evan's voice. I waited for him to come find me. Surely he would. Any minute now. I imagined him walking in, smiling awkwardly, saying something like, "Mom, sorry, it's a little crazy in here." That was all I needed, a sign that he knew I was there. Minutes passed, then more. Rachel moved around the kitchen, busy but efficient, never once meeting my eyes. When I offered again to help, she sighed quietly, like I had asked for something unreasonable. "It's fine," she said. "You'll just get tired." The words weren't loud, but they were sharp. A reminder of my place, of my age, of my usefulness, or lack of it. I folded my hands in my lap to stop them from shaking. Through the doorway, I caught glimpses of faces I didn't recognize. Friends, maybe coworkers. People who knew Rachel well enough to hug her, to laugh easily in her home. I didn't recognize myself in that picture. At one point, I heard my name. Just once, followed by a pause, then a laugh that felt wrong. I couldn't hear what was said next, only the way the conversation moved on, smooth and unconcerned. I told myself not to be sensitive, that I was imagining things. Hosting was stressful. I knew that better than anyone. I had hosted countless dinners with a smile on my face and worry in my chest. But this felt different. This felt deliberate. Time stretched thin. The smell of roasted meat filled the air, making my stomach tighten. I hadn't eaten much all day, saving room for dinner, for the shared meal I believed was coming. When voices began to rise and chairs scraped against the floor, I assumed it was finally time. I smoothed my coat, stood slowly, and walked